Welcome to the Authority File, the academic library podcast from Choice. Choice is a publishing division of the ACRL and the publisher of Choice Reviews and CC Advisor. This episode is brought to you by SAGE Publishing. I'm Bill Mickey, the host of the podcast and the editorial director at Choice, and for this 4-episode series, my guests and I have been discussing essential strategies for not only measuring ROI, but the fundamental principles for displaying that data in a visually appealing way. Academic libraries are increasingly tasked with measuring all kinds of data to justify expenditures across the department, whether for collection development, outreach, or for demonstrating the library's contribution to student success and its value within the institution. In this final episode of the series, our guests and I talk about trends in academic library data collection, including how priorities have evolved over the years. My guests are Dr. Carol Tenopir, Chancellor's Professor at the School of Information Sciences at the University of Tennessee, Dr. Stephanie Evergreen, an internationally recognized data visualization and design expert who regularly conducts keynote presentations and workshops and is the author of 2 books, Effective Data Visualization and Presenting Data Effectively, Communicating Your Findings for Maximum Impact, which is now in its 2nd edition. Also joining us is Kristen Tepfer, Executive Marketing Manager at SAGE Publishing and the Global Head of the Data Evidence and Reporting Team in Library Marketing. I'd like to talk a little bit about some of the trends, that have been evolving over the years in terms of the data that libraries are collecting and how they're presenting it, and not necessarily speaking about trends in the data, but trends of the data, I suppose. So, Kristen, I'm wondering if it might be helpful if you gave us some perspective, longitudinal perspective, I suppose, concerning your team and how it's evolved over the years in terms of the data it's been collecting for your customers. Maybe what's considered critical data these days that may not have been on anybody's radar, say 10 years ago. And, following on that, has the process of tracking data for the purposes of ROI, for example, changed accordingly? Has it always has data been collected always about ROI, or has this become more acute more recently in terms of maybe some external forces that are impacting academic libraries within the institution?
Yeah, so from my perspective and what I've been learning over these years, I guess one example that kind of comes to mind, I think I had mentioned before, one of the strongest pieces of data insights that we got some time ago was turnaway data, and at that time, librarians were really considering it this undeniable indicator that a patron was interested in a resource and they felt compelled to purchase it and make it available to end users. But that has changed a bit over time.
Mhm.
We used to only track turnaways on things like journals and book content, so it was actually really straightforward. Someone was trying to they may have seen an abstract of a journal or a book, and if they went through the trouble of trying to download that article after that, they must have had some sort of interest. They must have wanted to cite something from there. So that was pretty straightforward in them in deciding that a turnaway was showing value for that content. But
Yeah.
now that we can kind of track turnaways on other types of resources like video segments or larger research tools that are more of a tool than a piece of research on its own, librarians are really starting to question more what can we really determine from this data. So do we really know that a student watched a video that they clicked on, for example, or did they kind of just click on it and it was in the background, or and how do we know that this was really a piece of valuable research to them? So with more of that pressure to show the impact of the resources for that student outcome, they need, I think they're starting to need a lot more tangible data. They need beyond just an unsuccessful click on something to indicate value
Right.
and have them purchase something from us. So the way we collect data, the way we present it, it really does have to have a lot more focus on helping to show that impact on the ROI. Definitely. So I would agree.
Yeah, so it sounds like you've begun looking at more at how the research is being conducted. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
if with the insights that we can see
Hmm.
from the data that we're able to collect, again, it is a little bit more of a limited view than the comprehensive maybe view that the librarian has, obviously, with a lot of
Right.
other factors to take into consideration. But at least from the sliver of data that we're able to collect and present, we're definitely, trying to look for habits more than just numbers of downloads. If we
Right.
can, see some
Yep.
sort of trends.
Okay. And then Dr. Tenopir, any thoughts on that? Is that something you would agree with, and are you seeing happening yourself?
Yeah, what I've really seen is over the last 10 or 15 years is a change of a focus from inward looking, using data to make collection decisions, using data like gate count data to do staffing decisions, all that inward, to the more outward looking. So, what does the
Hmm.
data tell us about value and success? And so, I've seen a lot of libraries realize that they need to collect multiple types of data. So they still collect those kinds of data about usage, but then need to go the next step, which is often with surveys or some of these other methods we've talked about that look at the so what. So these things are downloaded. Do people use them, read them, use them, and then what's the outcome of that use? And so you have to have multiple kinds of data. It's gotten more complicated, but probably more interesting. You're trying to get further downstream in the analysis, and it takes lots of different kinds of data.
Okay. Um, Dr. Evergreen, I'm wondering how what you're listening to right now, how this might resonate with what you do, in terms of, I suppose, on a broader scale, sort of looking at data collection and reporting in general, and how that might be evolving, and again, how that might affect the practice of turning that data into a more visual approach.
Sure. Well, I do believe that these days, everybody is trying to make data driven decisions. And so
Yeah.
they are in a position, especially in a case like, let's think university president, so many different activities happening on a campus, and trying to make decisions about those is like, it's like you're going to always be trying to equate apples and oranges. So they get down to things like ROI because they think that's a common thread by which we could measure, say, the impact of the football team against the impact of the library. And it's difficult. It's difficult, and it's going to be messy. And so, as Carol was saying, the more the different kinds of data we can use to build up a full story is going to help us for sure. Um,
Yep.
it's also going to help them better sell it to the other people they have to talk to, because the university president is going to have to go back and justify the budget decisions that they've made to the broader community. And if it's a state funded university, that's back out to taxpayers as well. Um, and I think in other library settings, I've seen people. I just saw one actually. It was a county library that had an ROI calculator right on their website. It was for taxpayers, of course. It's for users of the library, but they're like, you want to see what you save by going to the library, enter in how many books you rented here. And then they had multiplied that book by $15 per book. And they were like, look, we save you $150 if you rent 10 books, if you borrow 10 books from us. And they had all kinds of things that you could plug in, classes that you could attend, meeting spaces that you could borrow, and how much you actually save people. And when you're talking about using taxpayer money, those are the kinds of justifications you need to be able to provide. So it's cool to see this stuff, and it's cool to see it out there. I totally agree that we're going to need more data. And I think one of the trends that I've seen in my work is how much the groundswell of librarians have been interested in data viz these days. I was talking to a friend of mine who is in the library world, and she was telling me about grants that she's a part of now that are focused on data visualization of library data, and groups like the library carpentry. I mean, like really cool stuff is going on in that space that I think folks are understanding that there's this pressing need to figure out how to visualize all the numbers that we're now generating.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So, Kristen, I'm wondering just if there's some insight that you can provide in terms of some of the things that the team has been learning along the way over the years that have been most effective in terms of its data collection and presentation practices. I mean, I imagine there's been an interesting mix of sort of proactive data collection and reactive collection based on what libraries are communicating back to you based on their needs. I think we talked a little bit about this earlier, but how are you basically on an ongoing basis, refining your data collection for your clients?
Yeah, like Carol, I guess, mentioned before, usage and turnaway data, and I've kind of talked about that a bit, it's still very important, probably the center of what librarians are looking at. But because we're having to get more creative and show value in different ways, I think the real where we hit home the most is when we're able to share that data that is not really available in the library. So I think it really is that faculty insight, and what, because so many more much more often we're being told by librarians that they're not going to purchase a big database from us unless they've gotten faculty buy-in, and interest. And so if we can kind of go back and say, well, this is what we've collected, if this looks like enough interest to you, or if you'd like us to kind of dig in a little bit further with your faculty, we're happy to do that. But it's us, I guess the evolution has been just, just taking it a step further, actually engaging with the campus, actually, trying to investigate rather than just kind of spitting out reports. That's never been our goal. So we've had to, as data becomes more and more important, we have to have kind of a passion for it, to be honest. And I think we've got a team that's dedicated to that at Sage, which I think is quite unique across publishers. But Sage sees a real value in this, and how we can kind of partner with a library. And I'm always trying to find out more and more often how the library is going to use the data, what they need, what are their biggest challenges, and then try to keep evolving what we're gathering, how we're looking at it, how we present it. And it really just builds trust and long-term partnerships for us with our customers, because they see we're really trying to help them as much as we can.
Great. And then lastly, Dr. Tenopir, I mean, I'm wondering if this matches up as well with what you're seeing. And I'm particularly interested to hear what you might have to say about what Kristen mentioned about faculty insight and support and that kind of thing. Are you seeing that as well?
Yeah, I think we'd be remiss if we didn't mention that marketing sort of goes hand in hand here. So, our systems are so good and so transparent. You still hear faculty very loudly proclaiming, "I never go to the library anymore," and I never let them get away with that. But if they say that to the provost, they are probably in the e-library all the time, and half the time they don't recognize it. Maybe all the time they don't recognize it. They're through the link resolver. So we need to. It's a constant marketing plus demonstrating plus collecting data. All those things kind of go together, and that's a real challenge, and it's something that not everybody feels real comfortable doing. But all of those kinds of things, you have to remind people of the services they're using. I think that's one reason why personal services, like helping faculty on grant teams, or helping with research data management, or teaching the classes for students and faculty, those kinds of things are outside of the library really important. And so we need, if they say, "I don't use the library," well, you use the e-library, but also the library comes and helps you in your space. That's going to become more and more important.
That was Carol Tenopir, Stephanie Evergreen, and Kristen Tepfer. This concludes our 4-part series on how academic libraries can effectively track and present ROI data. This series was brought to you by SAGE Publishing. Find all of the episodes of The Authority File on your favorite podcast app or on our website, choice360.org. Just click on the librarianship dropdown. On choice360.org, you'll also find information on Choice's entire product platform, including Choice Reviews, CC Advisor, Choice Webinars, resources for college libraries, our white papers, and a whole lot more. A great way to keep up with the Authority File is to join the Choice Authority File Facebook group, which you can access via the Choice Reviews Facebook page. As a member of the group, you can give us feedback, suggest podcast participants, chat with other listeners, and submit new topic ideas. Sponsorship and advertising for the Authority File podcast are handled by Choice's advertising manager, Pam Marino, and all of our episodes are produced by Choice's digital media specialist, Mark Dirks. That's all for this week. Thanks for joining us.